not a lot of people appreciate landscape painting for the technical aspect and how difficult it is. That goes for classical figurative art in general. The general population have a less than average understanding of what painting is. So like technical painting is not going to be as interesting for the general public. So I mean, by that, people won't consume or buy more traditional paintings. They'd rather go to IKEA and buy something. It's because they don't know what it means. I think that has to do a lot with the lack of appreciation, I feel.
This is the Creative Endeavor Podcast, the podcast bringing you inspiring stories from creative professionals from around the world. It's real conversations with real artists. My name's Andrew Tischler. What a pleasure to have your company here in the studio once again. In this conversation with Joakim Wanrup, who goes by the name Jogs Flash on Instagram. You can find him at JOGSFLASH. Follow along his journey. He's doing some inspiring plein air work where he captures the beauty of the Norwegian landscape working from life. Now, Joakim really inspires me to be a little bit more adventurous with my approach to plein air. This is one of the treats and one of the benefits of doing this podcast is being exposed to other artists who have just got a different way of doing it. He's certainly out there living it. From painting on top of mountains to working in the thick of a blizzard, he creates some inspiring, jaw-dropping work, capturing the beauty of the landscape that surrounds him. I wanted to ask Joakim all about his technical approach, a little bit about the art business, and his beginnings as an artist. And this conversation did not disappoint. We're going to jump right into it, but just first, before we get into this conversation, just a quick shout out to our sponsor, Rosemary & Co. brushes. Now, Rosemary & Co. have been making the finest quality artist brushes for the last 40 years. They are by far the best in the business, in my opinion. And now, this is predominantly what I'm using here in the studio. What I appreciate about Rosemary & Co. is the consistent high quality of their brushes. I'm using personally a wide range of bristle brushes, synthetics, and a few of the softer fibers. Now I've really been enjoying using some of those series 274 and 275s and appreciating a little bit more of a softer approach to some of my newer works on thinner, finer weaved canvas and linen. But every time I explore a new range that Rosemary & Co. offer, I'm just blown away by their quality and what I'm able to achieve with these brushes. Now, of course, we know that it can help having quality materials to use. It makes a huge difference. We just got to show up with all of our creativity and skills. But it does help having a good brush. If you haven't painted with Rosemary & Co. before, experience the difference for yourself. And trust me, these guys know what they're doing. Check them out at rosemaryandco.com. That's rosemaryandco.com. And trust me, your art will thank you for it. And just one last thing, there is an exclusive video version of the podcast, which you can find only on Tisch Academy. Click that link in the description that accompanies this podcast, and you can see the video version. You can see Joakim in his studio and myself in mine. And we even cut in here some examples of his work and any artistic inspiration and heroes from the past that we're talking about in this conversation. There's plenty of that too. It really is a visual feast for the eyes, so make sure you check that out by clicking the link in the description. It can only be found on Tisch Academy. All right, I'm going to get out of here. Let Joakim take over. Here he is. This is Joakim Wanrup in the Creative Endeavor. Joakim, it's great to finally do this. Welcome to the Creative Endeavor podcast.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yeah, I'm excited.
I've been I've been following you online for many, many years now. Um, just looking at your phenomenal plein air painting and artwork that you produce in the studio, you seem to have a real, attraction, affinity to plein air painting and capturing the beauty of where you are. Tell me, what is it about plein air that you love? What is it that inspires you?
Thank you, by the way, for having me and for following along and with the kind words. Yeah, I definitely have focused my attention on plein air painting um, because yeah, outside is what inspires me, I think. Yeah. Um, Obviously, I do some studio work too, but outside, like being in nature, immersed in nature, sort of the existential feeling of being one with nature is I think maybe not what made me start in the beginning, but definitely what has kept me painting plein air, like that sort of feeling, being immersed in what I'm supposed to sort of paint. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's
Yeah,
something about it's almost being one with your subject, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's so in 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 one way it's just like another form for addiction for me, I think, because everything is new all the time. Like even if you go to the same exact spot, it doesn't matter when you go, whenever you go, it's going to be something different to it, so everything is always going to be new in a way,
Hmm.
you know. I mean, even if you go on the same time of day at the same season and whatever, it will still be something different. The weather will be different, you know, the clouds have changed, or you know what I mean. There's always something new, so it's like constant chase, I think, as well. I think that's what sort of helps me keeping up.
Yeah. There's something that's come up recently. I spoke to Nicholas O'Leary, and I was thinking about this, and I've seen a few people do this on Instagram, where and online, and I'm aware that artists like Antonio Lopez Garcia did this as well, where they would do multi days painting from life. Have you ever tried one of those?
Oh yeah, yeah. Uh, Not a lot of times, but yeah, it happens. Especially now, the last couple of years, I've like gone up in size in terms of what I'm painting outdoors.
Hmm.
So the last couple of years, I've been doing more and more of those, like coming back to the same spot and hope for like the same weather type of
Yeah.
deal. There's always going to be something different, so you know, but you have a good reference either way, and maybe it's just drawing and stuff like that that you need to sort of fill in. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. Have you done it? Like
I've not
gone
done
back
it yet. I've
and
not
done it?
and so I guess the challenge there would be, how would you realize a painting like that if there's something great happening day one, day two, you're rained out, day three, the light's slightly different, or maybe there's a haze or some smoke in the air or whatever. How do you
Yeah.
capture all those subtle things? I've thought about like, yeah, I'd love to do it, but just how to tackle that, no idea. But
No, it's
it'd be
like
a lot of fun.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think the most amount of times I've gone back for painting is 3 times. So it's not like I've done it 24 sessions outside in the same spot.
Mhm.
But that would be cool. Like to actually paint it for like 3 or 4 years only during a season. You know, maybe you have 2 or 3 days every season. I don't know, but that would be cool. But yeah,
So
it's
what do you what are you looking for in a plein air subject? What seems to draw your eye, and what's the thing that seems to, capture that thing for you? Like, okay, I'm going to set up right here. That's what I got to paint.
I'm not 100% sure. I think mainly it's like a preference on composition. If I look at most of my planner works, it's more or less the same composition. I have like 2 or 3 compositions that I go for, um, but or at least that's always safe, sort of. I feel that I produce best work if I focus on light and go for a specific interest in the lighting in the situation, sort of
Mm.
over like the subject matter. I painted a bunch, like on location for a couple of commissions, for example, and then the subject matter isn't really what I'm interested in, and that never really turns out well. So most of the times, I think it's if I find the lighting like nice or incredible or something, yeah, I think that produces the best work out of me at least.
Amazing. There seems to
Yeah,
be such a beautiful low light to your part of the world. Being up there, Swedish, but living in Norway. It seems to be like, yeah, this really lovely low angle. But I would love to go there one day because the sounds and fjords and landscape just look incredible. And of course, we get a sense of this looking at your Instagram and even your studio space. I've just pulled up on the other screen here, um, this studio space setup that you've got. Tell me about the studio that you're coming to us from at the moment. Like it looks a little small, but
yeah,
I mean
it's
it
fun.
it looks like you've got your you've got a pretty ideal space here though. Are you up in a loft or in an attic
Yeah,
space?
I am. I yeah, I am at home for the moment. This is my space for now. We just bought our first house, me and my um, partner, and moved to the countryside. We lived in Oslo for like 9 or 10 years, 9, 10, yeah, 9 years at least together. Um, so yeah, so it's been like moving out of the studio and moving into the attic of our house. But thankfully, I paint mostly outdoors, so it's not super necessary to have a huge studio space. But yeah, I feel it. It's typical because now I'm starting to paint bigger and bigger, and of course that happens now. So it is what it is. It's
It's
it's temporary.
for the people that are listening. I mean, you can stand up, but only in the middle of the space, it looks like,
Yeah, I
pretty
have
much.
about a meter, like walking stand up from side to side. I have about a meter. Yeah,
Wow.
It-
So
it's
most of
about
these
10 centimeters from the ceiling.
most of these paintings, I mean, you've probably got to be working sitting down, I imagine. But I think I've said to people as well, like I'm blessed. I've got a pretty big studio space here, but the only space that really matters is that foot between you and the canvas. When you're right there, like it doesn't matter how much space is above you or behind you or whatever. It's just right there. It's that space right there that you have.
Yeah, you can do so much with so little, really. I mean, yeah, for sure. But your studio looks amazing. I'm like that's always what I've gotten like sucked me into your content and contents and stuff. Like seeing you in this studio and the other studio as well, right? Also it looked awesome.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I moved down at the start of this year
Mm.
from I was living at the top of the South Island. We had a house in a place called Kinnaperu Sound, and I was trying to make the most of just a situation which was like residential type house, right? Just standard bedroom sizes. And so I converted one of the bedrooms into a studio. And then I had also like this upstairs area, which is a beautiful room, but it got ridiculously hot in the summer
Yeah.
and really quite cold in the winter. And I couldn't regulate the temperature and the lighting was bad. And I was trying to make it work and it just wouldn't work. The sun was coming from all angles, big windows across it. But it's nice to be back in this old building, which was a
Yeah.
former drapery building. You'd be able to come in and
That's
get your
awesome.
curtains made and your pants sewn and all that stuff back in the day. It was a great big fabric warehouse type building. But no, it's great.
Cool.
Got the high ceilings and all that. It still takes a bit of energy to try and heat it, but it's nice having the space. Yeah. But maybe it's a little too much. I don't know. My goal
It's
is always
like
to have go on.
but it's what every artist wants. I don't think if you have the option to, I don't think any artist can like sort of scale down. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
always want bigger and bigger because we need to fill up space, and I think it makes sense
Do you
always.
you think artists maybe I found this, it's particularly with myself that we suffer from that next thing syndrome or the better deal syndrome. It's like, yeah, what's happening over there? Oh, wouldn't it be great over there? I don't know. Keeps you going from thing to thing. Maybe I should just chill a little bit here.
Yeah, maybe. I think maybe it's just human, isn't it?
Hey,
I think
look,
so.
I'd love to know. There's a few places I'd like to go in this conversation, because here on the podcast, I love to dive into the business side of art about what it is that you're out there you're doing and your relationship with some of these things like social media and selling paintings and working with clients and that sort of thing. But then there's also the act of the creation of your work. But before we get into those aspects, how did this start for you? When did you first fall in love with painting? What was that initial stage like, and how old were you when you caught the painting bug?
I mean, it's like most artists, right? We're always like the kid who was good at drawing or whatever. So,
Mm.
um, yeah, I've always drawn and painted since I was a kid, for sure. Um, I think that when I was like 15, 16, I really started because I did a lot of graffiti when I was younger, but around 15, 16, I started to pay attention more to what would like come next, sort of, or like how could graffiti develop into characters, portraits, and stuff like that. And pretty fast it turned into like when I was 18, I already picked up like the interest of more traditional type of painting, like still life, for example. I did still lifes mainly for a long time. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's always been a part, so it's difficult to say like when it started. It's just been stages for sure. Um, yeah, I remember something funny because you're in New Zealand, but obsessing with extra materials of the Lord of the Rings trilogy,
Ah.
like behind the scenes and stuff, and like seeing I forget their names, John Howe and
Oh yes, the
like that
pencil art. Uh,
the Chris, yeah,
John
that's what I
Howe, and
got
there
really
was
big.
another artist.
His name's
Yeah, yeah.
Christopher. I
Alan
want to say
Lee.
Christopher. Alan Lee, yeah, that's right.
Alan Lee. That's right.
And and yeah, that got me like, oh wow, people can actually just paint whatever they want in terms of like just using their imagination or reference from literature, they can just create out of like no references whatsoever. That sort of sparked something different in me. I couldn't do
Mm.
that whatsoever. I could never be like a concept artist. I couldn't create anything if I don't have a reference, for sure. But yeah, that definitely sparked something within me. And yeah, I think especially a love for like nature. I think came with that too.
Hmm.
After that, or milieu environments, you know.
Yeah, right. That I mean that film series. I was talking to Hermina Agra on the podcast recently. She was talking about how much she loved the Lord of the Rings. As do I. I mean, that has definitely stood up over the years, and it's still, in my opinion, is one of the best series of films that has ever been made. Still, but I love how analog it was. How they still relied on practical effects. Yes, there was a bit of computer stuff in there, but there were real costumes and real, you know, prosthetics and makeup and weapons and models and miniatures. So they did old school on so much of that,
Yeah, everything was real, sort of,
Yeah.
even though it's fantasy or whatever. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, incredible. So many incredible artists working on those type of projects. So, I mean, just watching the behind the scenes is more inspiring than yeah, most things that I've seen out there, to be honest.
I but you said something there. I don't have a complete thought around this idea, but it's something that I think about often. Where you look at something like that and you marvel at the creative genius of the people that it's like they read the book and it's like, oh, okay, here's how we do it, and they're doing it in a day and age before you could put in a text prompt into some sort of image generator, which just floors me that's a thing. But they're doing it old school, and I've thought about that going, if I didn't have the reference or the thing in front of me, could I even begin to tease this thing out? And sure, a lot of concept artists they do use reference, but I've thought about that. Like what is that difference? Like, I think it was called creative imagination and synthetic imagination, if I'm getting my terms right. And so synthetic is where you synthesize, you take a whole bunch of different things, you put them together, where versus creative imagination where you're actually originating something. I find that enormously difficult. Like you know, like you, I need to stand there at the edge of the escarpment looking out over the fjord or the sound and paint what I see. Um, it, it's hard for me to just come up with something like that, you know?
Yeah. No, I think it takes a lot of practice. I mean, I think I could probably paint like a simple backlit situation from imagination because I spent like the first 3 or 4 years landscape painting just doing that situation. But that's as far as it goes for me, I think. But that's cool. I never even thought about it. That like two different types of creativity or creation. That's I'm gonna have to put that on somewhere up in here where it fits. Remember it. Look into it.
Well, I really hope you're enjoying this episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast so far. Just a quick interruption. We'll get right back into it. I just need to tell you about this podcast sponsor, Rosemary & Co. brushes. Now, when I first started, I thought that brushes weren't really that big a deal. I mean, yeah, sure, they're kind of important as long as the bristles don't fall out, right? Well, little did I know that you need consistency, and a quality brush that's consistently made will unlock a whole world of technique. This was a paradigm shift for me and my work. One of my favorite brushes to use is the Tish Dagger. No, not just because it's named after me, but the versatility of this brush is just extraordinary. I can get relatively fine lines, some broad strokes, and then some interesting painterly accuracy with just the tip of that dagger. Check them out by visiting rosemaryandco.com and check out some of the other brushes that they have on offer there as well. Now, they don't just make brushes for oil painters, they make brushes for acrylics and watercolor as well. I've even heard of makeup artists using their brushes. So check them out by visiting rosemaryandco.com, and trust me, your art will thank you for it. All right, let's jump right back into this conversation with Joakim Wanrup. Here he is in the Creative Endeavor. Let me ask you this. How have you gone monetizing your creative pursuit, and how's it working for you, and what are some of the things that you found have worked for you from a professional standpoint, and maybe some of the things that you've tried that haven't worked quite as well?
Well, in terms of monetizing it, I haven't. How it's working is not. No, I'm joking. Mostly, so I'm a teacher. As much as I'm an artist, I'm probably a teacher at heart as well.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my artistic income is from teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, moment at least. So I've gone down that route, like workshops and courses and stuff like that. But obviously, in this day and age, it's selling paintings online. Trying to sort of find galleries now. So I feel like I'm career-wise in still quite early on, of course. But yeah, just trying to figure it out really. I mean, Instagram has worked a lot for me. Patreon didn't work for me. Creating digitally is not my thing, so I've sort of like left that out of the equation after many years of sort of dreaming about that I could do it, but not really having the energy or care to do it. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm sort of organized it for now.
Yeah, and don't worry. I mean, you don't have to be absolutely crushing it. I mean, that's not the point of the podcast, you know, because what happens when you because you are crushing it in a way, you know, particularly artistically. I mean, I'm looking at this image on my other screen, and it's like far out, man. It's beautiful work. The idea behind the podcast as well is just to expose these stories, because there's always a learning experience in there somewhere for them. So I appreciate your openness there. I've tried so much stuff that's worked and so much stuff that hasn't worked. I think it's important to just kind of keep trying until you find that thing that's like, hey, man, yeah, no, this is actually clicking, and then doubling down on that. So, is there a healthy art world, or at least for the representational traditional type artistic approach, is that pretty thriving there in Norway?
I wouldn't say so. Norway has a very peculiar taste in art. Generally
Hmm.
speaking, it's pop art is what's been trending for the last 10 years I've been here, more or less, which is uh, strange in my opinion. But traditional art, not so much, especially not landscape, believe it or not. I think Norway, in my opinion, would make for the best country in the world to paint landscapes in, especially outdoors, but
Wow.
um, it really isn't. So, but yeah, that's I mean, part of why I'm teaching landscape is to sort of try and change that for this country. I would love to have more good, talented, uh, hardworking landscape painters here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the landscape there is just extraordinary. I'm
Mm.
reminded of this post that you made where you have just a single quote. The biggest problem many artists face today is the fact that there are so much people with such poor taste. And that's interesting. I'd love to hear you expand on that a little bit.
I got so much hate for that. It's just me being silly
Let's
and
do it.
trying to
Let's
fool
do it. Let's
people, I
do it.
think.
Let's do it. I love the
Um,
haters.
well, I mean, in a way, I believe it, but in a way, it's also kind of a joke, you know? I mean, not a lot of people appreciate landscape painting for the technical aspect and how difficult it is. I mean, I think that goes for traditional or classical figurative art in general. Um, the general population have less than average understanding of what painting is from a
Mm,
technical standpoint. So, like technical painting, I mean, is not going to be as interesting for the general public. So, I mean, by that, people won't consume or buy more traditional paintings. They'd rather go to IKEA and buy something. You know what I mean? It's because
wow.
yeah, it's because they don't know what it means. I think so. I think that has to do a lot with the amount of uh, lack of appreciation I feel landscape painting gets, in particular
Mm.
in this country. That makes sense.
No, no,
But yeah,
totally. Totally.
but it's a douchey statement to make, and I deserve a lot of hate for it. But
No, but you got a conversation going, just scrolling through the comments there. You got a conversation going there. It's interesting. Um, you did put
what's your
another
take
one.
on it?
Well, okay. I'm looking at that situation. So I'm not in Norway, so I don't know. But depending on where you go, there are markets where you can find traction with buyers and enthusiasts alike. Um, and I think it's interesting now, the world being the way it is and everybody being connected the way they are, that again, I hold to that statement. There's never been a better time to be an artist.
Oh yeah,
We have so many ways of marketing ourselves. However, I think it's important to couple your digital efforts with physical efforts in the real world. And so I think you've got a unique challenge, but that presents an opportunity to shape culture in a way, if we can be so bold and big here. But
yeah,
I love the idea of going, okay, well, this isn't really a thing because people aren't really appreciating. They're doing more of the pop art thing, so it's not really a thing. I can't get a foothold. It's like, cool, create a market, be the one that
yeah.
disrupts it. I don't know. My maybe it's ego. It probably is ego. Maybe I'm a little bit mental as well, but I just look at it and go, awesome. That means that, I could be one of those people that kind of goes, hey, this is valid. Check it out. How amazing is this? And I in a way, I mean, you're doing that very thing, right? Because I don't know. Despite the fact people want to go like abstract modern, get into the pop art thing, there's also that real phenomenon is that people want to do it. People want to paint. And
Yeah.
sometimes painting the abstract and letting loose on a canvas and doing all that, whilst it's valid and that's perfectly okay, there's something about the satisfaction of that's a beautiful mountain. I want to paint it from life. So, there's an opportunity there as well. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a bit there, but I think definitely keep going, you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. No, it's the statement is more of a joke than anything, really. I mean, uh, we have a saying in Sweden that uh, taste is like the. It's ridiculous when you translate it. Taste is like your butt. It's in two parts, or like it's split. It's split, meaning like everybody has a different taste and stuff, which is something that's so incredible. It's a stupid saying, and it makes zero sense to translate it actually. But
Yeah, you're right.
you
That
get my
doesn't make
point.
any sense in English.
But
So,
like so, yeah. So meaning that people have different tastes, which
yeah.
is which is what I love. Like that's actually what I love with the art world. That there's so much different, and there's
Hmm.
so much that's good, and
Hmm.
so much better than what I do, but it's completely different from what I do. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I love abstract art. I love
Hmm.
sculpture. I love a lot of things in the art world that
Hmm.
particularly isn't in the realms of what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Landscape painting is probably what I look at the least, to be honest, these days at least. Yeah. Yeah.
But surely you had some influences, when you first got into this. Like, who are those giants for you of landscape painting, plein air painters? Who have you looked at? I mean, have you seen originals in galleries and museums where you're like, whoa, like that's the path there. Did anybody illuminate that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, uh, in museums, like I never like when I was a kid, I was never like going to museums and being inspired like that. But when I was older, for sure. But what really got me wanted to start painting landscapes was finding Mark D'Alessio uh, on social media. To be honest, like
Hmm.
the paintings he does, so simple, so easy, or makes it look easy at least. And I thought, oh yeah, shit, that looks super easy. I can do that. Could not do that at all, and got hooked immediately. You know what I mean? So he was very inspiring for a long time. Still is, of course. But obviously that grew into to start looking at more and more landscape painters for sure. So I mean, Soroya has always been a part of that inspiration. Levitan has always been a part of that inspiration. Um, and if you look, you find new painters every single day. So I've stopped looking because it's too much.
Yeah. Who who would be those Norwegian and Swedish giants? I mean, we all know Anders Zorn, right? But
Yeah.
from that part of the world, like who would have been some of those 19th century that would kind of fit in with that kind of timeline of traditional landscape? Who would
So
be some?
Norwegian, yeah, Norwegian would be Hans Gude. Hans as in Hans,
Yep,
Gude as in Gude.
I know the guy.
Incredible painter. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
he's a painter.
We did a deep dive on a few of his paintings on the Academy. Yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah, no, it's overwhelming. Um, Fritz Fritz Saulo
Oh,
is
dude,
also a Norwegian painter.
another
Yeah,
one of my favorites.
yeah, also insane.
Yeah.
Uh, there's one that I like is called Adelsten Norman.
Oh, you're gonna have to spell
Uh,
that one for me.
yeah, Adelsteen is the first name, and
Hmm.
then last name I think is Normann, I think.
Okay. Here we go. Pulled up a Wikipedia.
Yeah,
Um, oh, dude, some fjord views. Oh,
yeah,
epic.
very, yeah, very front lit fjord type of
Oh,
stuff. I like it a lot. It's cool. So
yeah.
very classical and iconic here in Norway
Wow.
for sure.
Wow. There's an artist, Anders Olving. Is that
Yes,
oh,
Even Ulving.
it's Edwin? Was it?
Yeah. Even, Even Ulving.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I got the name wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. That's another one.
Is that the one you're thinking of?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've just pulled it
Yeah.
up here in
Yeah.
another tab. I mean, so I've got a few of
It's funny that you say it. Yeah.
a few of these images on file. Let me share my screen and
Yeah.
show you this one. This one I've got in my file, and it's one of my favorites. Again, if you're listening to the podcast and you're just listening to the audio version, there is a full video version over on the Academy. Check it out. Link is in the description. I'm just pulling up an image here on my other screen of Evan Olving, one of his beautiful paintings of a fjord. This is
It's
one of the things
it's
that keeps
ridiculous.
me the selective light. There's one thing I love, when I'm looking at landscapes. If there's sun throughout the whole thing, I'll normally put a few clouds overhead and just spotlight
Hmm.
one area. I love
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
dramatic light, man. It's so cool.
It's amazing. Yeah. No, and Evan is insane. It has such a like contemporary feel to it as well. It feels a lot like traditional concept art, in my opinion. And to be
Oh
honest, he's one of the
yeah.
like most underestimated Norwegian painters for sure. Even here in Norway, you can find like nice paintings off of him that are quite cheap to purchase, which is insane to me.
What?
Anyone could probably afford an Evan Ulving painting. So if you're collecting art, Andrew, look into that. He's amazing.
Maybe. I haven't really hit the art collecting money
Same,
yet.
same. We might never.
We'll see. We'll see. Never say never,
Yeah,
right? Look at that. I mean, that's
yeah,
just incredible. Yeah.
it is incredible. And I love. There's so many Norwegian painters, and to be honest, like I don't know that many of the Swedish landscape painters because
Mhm,
I've only really painted landscape since I moved to Norway. So I
mhm.
focused a lot on that. And most of them are painting in like northern Norway, where the landscape is a lot like this, like fjord landscape,
Right.
1,000 meter high mountains sticking straight out of the ocean, which is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's you have to paint it. It's
You
amazing.
have to. You have to paint it. How can you not paint that? Yeah.
Exactly. And just
Extraordinary.
that gradient of it, like the big shadow in the middle of the mountain, sort
Yeah.
of, yeah, exactly. Just the gradient going from like the cast shadow on the left hand side into
Mhm.
like the sort of reflected light within the shadow of the snow on the right hand side. Just that is just so gorgeously done. He's yeah, he's too good, this guy. I love it.
I hadn't seen that until you pointed that out. That the subtlety of the reflected light back into the shadow there, just giving it a little bit of a warm glow, the way it goes from that warm to
Yeah,
cool.
but
Yeah, and it gives you that scooped effect, doesn't it? It's
yeah,
just,
very
yeah,
much. Yeah.
hadn't noticed that. Wow. Yeah, extraordinary. So this is, these guys, they're giants of painting. They had such an incredible technical approach. They
Yeah,
didn't. Some of them probably weren't using as much photography as we have access to today. Certainly not, but maybe there were some
probably.
that they were using. But
Yeah,
I guess most of this would have been plein air, right? That they were drawing upon that these plein air studies, the experience out in the field, take that back into the studio, create something bigger from
yeah,
there.
yeah. As far as I know. Yeah. I mean, Hans Gude, for example, that you mentioned. I know he did a lot of watercolors outdoors, and
Hmm.
then sort of made those into the bigger sketches
Hmm.
or bigger paintings. Sorry. But yeah, that's yeah, classic one. The one on the first one you click, that's like Norway's national treasure in terms of painting. Like everyone
Wow.
in Norway knows this painting, even if you're 5 years old or whatever.
I'm trying to find a big version of it. They're not giving me a big
Yeah,
version for some reason.
that
But
one on Wikipedia should be quite big, I think. I
okay.
just did a workshop, like a 2 weekend workshop in painting this painting as a master copy. There's a
Oh
lot of
wow. Okay.
I love. It
Tell
should be here.
boom. Look at the size of this thing. Okay, found a great. So tell me about that. So master copies, that's quite interesting. So how long did
Yeah.
it take? How big was it? Tell me all about it.
Um, The how big the painting is?
Yeah, your copy of it anyway.
Oh, sorry, I did like I've done three of them now, I think, or two and a half, or one almost finished, two half finished, I'd say rather.
Wow.
They're not too big. I think it's well, one of them out here. It's 54, 65. So it's quite small, and it's not exact ratio of the original one. The original one is 130 times 93 or something.
Right.
But it was good fun. So I painted alongside the students, and we had 2 weekends to do it, which is way too little time to do that. Because when
Yeah.
you look at it, like most of these like shapes of the mountains and stuff like that are like they're very simple, very clean, pure. So in my head, I was like, this could be an easy painting to paint. I think this is way easier than what I think it is. It was not. It was really difficult to make a master copy out of it. So
Wow.
a little bit too little time to do it, but the students did well. They got pretty far, and it was a lot of fun to paint the exact same subject alongside them and sort of do a demo whilst they were painting. Sort of, we could discuss the selection of paints and values and stuff like that
Well, how did you
together.
decide? How did you decide on palette and things like that to be able to recreate that work? I mean, was there that information out there about what good used?
Um, I'm not sure. I did, to be honest, I didn't look into the palette, but I've been considering looking into it. So doing the course again. Um, I've only used the same palette that I use, more or less, because yeah, you can get. I think you can get pretty much the same pigment off of it,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, or like the same colors that
Hmm.
the painting has through the palette. But obviously they use brown, which isn't on my palette, so there was some frustration during that mixing browns and particularly grays.
Mm.
So to be fair, should have probably looked into to doing the same palette as they used, but that might be for the next one.
Perfect. Well, it gives you a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more content there. But you mentioned palette there. Let's dive into the technical aspects of how you do what you do. Um, Plein air is such a challenging thing to do. It is. There's so many factors. Light's always changing. Weather's a factor. Time's a factor. What's your approach like? Maybe where we could start would be talk to me about your gear and your setup. I always find that so interesting because every artist seems to have a different approach gear wise. I love going out to paint with other artists because I'm like, what are you using? What's your Pashad box like? Oh, what are you fitting that to? Where'd you
Yeah.
get the tripod from? It's like, oh, you're not carrying very much. You got everything already. So tell me about your setup first, and then I'd love to dive into process.
My setup is converted camera tripod. Um, it's a lot of tape and a lot of clamps and very amateur-like. For someone who tries to be a professional painter, it doesn't look very professional at all. But it does the job. I sight size most of my painting, more or less at least. So and
Hmm.
I'm quite tall, so I sort of need a tall tripod with that rod extension. I
Hmm.
have a pallet box you fold out that's
Hmm.
attached to that rod, but I made myself. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. A hook for putting the backpack on it, and then I have like a homemade wet panel carrier. Uh, that's that. Yeah, more or less.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And what colors are you using? Are you getting out onto your palette?
So I work the primaries with the three blues, three reds, and three yellows plus titanium white. So I
Mhm.
do ultramarine, cerulean, cobalt blue. Um, Red is alizarin, cadmium light, and cadmium orange as a red.
Mhm.
Yellow is gold ochre, cadmium yellow middle, cadmium yellow light. Yeah, that's it. So same Mark D'Alessio's palette, more or less. Yeah, but
Wow.
I think it's like modern impressionist palette. I think
Incredible. And no brown.
no brown. No, just use the ultramarine and orange. You're good. If you want a
Ultramarine
warm
and
brown.
orange. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Or
Okay.
depend on what you think of the topic of temperature, I guess.
Well, so how are you making your darkest tones, your deepest tones? Because you got some darks, some really nice darks in some of your paintings. So how are you achieving that?
So I think in context they just look dark and deep. They're not really. I never go like the darkest dark. I'm always like two values above that, I think,
Hmm.
because it's not real. I don't feel like there's a point to have that darkest dark, or at least that's what I've sort of been taught.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, it's ultramarine plus an orange. And so cad orange, for example, if you want to do the shortcut, gives you like a dark warm brown, like burnt umber type.
Hmm.
Otherwise, to get something that's really like black or whatever, it's the ultramarine alizarin plus some cad yellow middle to sort of knock out the purple. But the alizarin is troublesome. Like you have to use that very sparingly. I feel like if you start painting with that palette, your paintings will look purple for the first 3 years. Sort of. It's yeah, should figure something else out, especially for beginner students not to use the laser. And I think
Wow.
it's inconvenient. Yeah.
Wow.
What
Yeah.
about you? What's on your palette?
Oh, I don't even want to say now.
No.
No, no, I've got all sorts on my palette. But plein air, I really love transparent yellow oxide and burnt umber.
Mhm.
So I've got a
Yeah.
couple of like an earthy transparent yellow and then a dark brown, obviously the burnt umber. Then I've got white. Normally it's titanium white, but I do love lead white. So occasionally
Yeah.
I'll sneak some lead white in there too. Maybe do a
Mhm.
mixing white 50/50 titanium permanence. And they're very
Mm.
much the same. Like my yellow, red, and blue, I just try to have a
Mm.
couple of different versions of those.
Yeah.
And then phthalo green. So I'll do a transparent yellow and an opaque yellow. So one's cool, one's
Mm.
warm. Transparent
Yeah.
red, opaque red, one cool, one warm. And then with blues, generally I'm using ultramarine and cobalt teal. So teal, kind
Yeah.
of like the cerulean, it's a very similar green shift to the blue,
Yeah.
but
Like
and
a
very
turquoise.
yeah, very opaque though, but it's a little
Okay.
bit cleaner and punchier, the teal I found.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but there's a natural quality that comes through with cerulean that's quite lovely as well. So I do enjoy that. But it's been years since I've used cerulean. But then phthalo green helps me achieve a really deep value. So if I'm using permanent crimson with the phthalo green, it goes nearly black. But I seldom use that in paintings. And that's it's interesting. I mean, this is why I love doing the podcast, is because when I talk to another artist, it unlocks a little something for me. It's like, oh, there's another technical approach here. This is really fascinating because I I I uh, I normally like to have that depth of register and that tonal value, but as you're saying, you might not need it. Everything is relative when you're painting plein air. If that's as low as you
Mhm.
go, you just maintain that value above that
Yeah.
that line, right? So
Yeah. Exactly.
and you're pulling it off, man. I'm looking at this little
Mhm.
painting that you've done. It says here Olden, Norway. This is a little gem. This
Oh
is
yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
stunning. This painting. I'll
Well,
just
thank
pull
you.
it up on my screen. Um,
Thank you very much.
ah, it is an absolute gem. But what I love about this is, I'm looking at this painting and the way you photographed it, the horizons lining up, and it you've matched the color and the value just about perfectly here. I mean, it is perfect. It's beautiful, and it's done with
Thank
such a
you very much.
painterly quality. Look at the water, the way that like this is a thing that gets me about plein air is it's so trying to match what you're seeing with this palette of colors. That's the chase, right? That's what keeps me hooked and addicted to this.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's always a chase. Because you never get it. You never get it perfect, like at all. There's always something that's wrong with it, and then the light has changed, so you have to sort of quit. You know what I mean? Which is like I love that. That actually gives a sense of freedom that you don't have in the studio. I don't have to make a decision when it's finished. You know what I mean? When you're outside, when it starts to rain, or your light is gone, it's over. You're good. Go home. You know what I mean? Nature
Yeah.
sort of decides when it's finished.
That's
But yeah, I think you have the reference of being outdoors is like it's just something more magical about it. Yeah, and if you nail some of those things down, you're like, oh, this feels like another part of reality, not necessarily like a photo or it feels like a memory. Do you know what I mean?
hmm.
Uh, Something that I really love about painting outdoors, especially.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there is something that you go beyond just that linear representation of the landscape when you're just shooting a photograph of something. When you're painting it, you are drawing upon that experience and you're feeling every bit of it. I'm looking at this
Mm.
um, image of you here. Going to butcher the pronunciation, Oslo Marka. There's an image of you in just about knee-high snow, and there's snow all over these trees and these hills. Everything's so complete whiteout, but the quality of light
Yeah.
there, and that must have been brutally cold. But what a place to paint.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I love, especially winter. I love winter. We just got the first snow today, which was happy. I'm still like a little child when the first day of snow comes. So yeah, I love painting in winter. It was definitely cold that year. I think I had a couple of days in minus 23 degrees or something like that. Uh, Staying, living outdoors for a couple of days and just painting. But it's also like when it's that cold, the atmosphere, and like everything freezes. So just the lighting and the sensation of the visual experience overall is so uh, crisp. If that's I don't know, that's the best word I could think of.
Yeah,
So
makes
yeah,
sense.
it's a lot of fun to paint when it's really cold too. It does something with the atmospheres for sure.
This is hilarious. I'm looking at your Instagram and there's this. I'm just gonna share my screen again because I
Mhm.
want to hear you talk about this. How the heck do you work under these conditions? And for the people that are just listening, I'm looking at an image. So this must be like close to midwinter. You got your brushes over there to the left on the little shelf. You've got your palette right there, beautiful little palette pot. The trouble is everything's caked in ice and snow.
Yeah.
How are you painting in these conditions? Was this during a painting or did you leave your palette out overnight?
No, this was during a painting.
Oh my word.
Thankfully it was like a white out type of painting, so like it didn't really matter. But yeah, it's tricky if it's snowing that much and you actually have like a lot of visibility, um, then it becomes a problem. But I had more or less like white snow on the snow covered icy lake, and then I
Mhm.
had a hazy type of forest on the other side, and then a white sky. So it turned out quite okay, but you get unwanted textures in the painting, let's say, for sure. Um, but yeah,
Mm. Do you get like I mean do you get like little bubbles of sorry, it sounds stupid, but like little bits of water trapped in the oil paint? Does it eventually dry out, evaporate out? I mean, I've never I've never painted. I mean, I didn't even paint in the rain,
yeah.
but like what how does that affect, the drying time or the drawing quality of the actual painting?
Yeah, I'm trying to think because I think may I don't have the painting anymore, but um, as far as I recall, it changes a little bit the drying thing. I mean, there's still some weird textures that you wouldn't really imagine, and I can only imagine the texture comes from the fact that it's like mixing with the snow because
Mhm.
it's not melting really either. So you get some weird textures, but obviously when you bring it inside and the snow melts, that turns into water. I normally, if I get snow on the painting and a little bit too much, I try to protect it as much as I can and the palette as well. But it melts. You just put some toilet paper on it. You're pretty much good. You can fix a little bit of the unwanted textures if it's too much. But
Mm.
yeah, it's not that big of a problem, I think. The
Okay.
problem is if you get too much on the palette, because then you can't really mix the the paint. Sorry,
Hmm. Hmm. Wow.
but it's the same. Is as inconvenient as getting water on the palette. Really, it's not ideal for sure. You should have like some type of protection over the palette. I tried a couple of years ago to build something in like plexiglass to cover the palette, but yeah, it didn't turn out too well. And I'd rather just avoid painting in blizzards. That's easier.
I mean, but if you're going to be a hardcore plein air artist, I mean, come on, get
Yeah,
painted
you
in a
have to do
blizzard,
it a
bro.
couple of times at
You
least.
gotta do it a couple of times.
Yeah.
So when you're painting, what's one of the what's some of your first marks that you're making and your approach? I've noticed on some of your panels and some of the images you've got a bit of an imprimatura, like a warm undertone, but in others there's none whatsoever.
Yeah.
So what's your preference there?
Now I've sort of cha changed my approach a little bit. I used to have a warm undertone. I was taught in sunlight, it's good. If it's overcast, you don't really need it. Just because it gets a little bit like too warm, but you need it sort of with the titanium white and the palette that I use.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the entire image gets a little too cold or too blue, I guess. Um,
Hmm.
but I've changed my white now to polar white, which is a pigment white 5, I think it is.
Hmm.
Lithopone or something like that. Is that correct? I'm not sure. And it's slightly warmer, so I can just go on a white panel and maintain the sort of same balance in the temperatures. Um, so these days I just go for white. I don't care to do the imprimatura. It's not necessary. And I kind of like to leave a little bit of white, sort of make it look like a sketch more than a finished painting. I enjoy that too.
Ah,
Aesthetics of it.
nice. Yeah, yeah, a little bit of an unfinished kind of around the corners and the periphery, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't mind it. Looks unfinished. It's kind of nice.
awesome.
Like some
Awesome.
of the best paintings I know are like Soroya's unfinished small sketches. Obviously he painted on just wood, so it looks like that sort of orange, warm orange type of tone. But yeah, the unfinished ones just like so good.
Hmm.
Love that.
I've not used the lithopone. I'm probably mispronouncing that. What the heck is that? Like what pigment base is that? That's interesting. And is it transparent or opaque?
No, it's opaque, so it's slightly warmer than titanium, if you like to refer to temperatures.
Hmm.
But I have no idea. I moved to a new town or outside. I'm on the countryside, so the art shop that's closest for me is like a weird semi-black market art shop. And the guy imports all the paint from what is it, from Czechia, I think. And I've never seen the brand before, and they had that polar white. And I saw that Michael Harding as well had polar white, I think it was. So I was like, oh, what the heck? I'll try it and see what happens. And I read about it, and yeah, it made sense in my head to go for a white palette. And I've been using it for the last year or 2 years maybe, and it
Hmm.
kind of works. I haven't tried the Michael Harding ones, but yeah, it works for me for now at least. We'll see. Maybe it'll age and turn green in 5 years from now or something. Who knows? Hope not.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. I'm pulling up the website here. I'm gonna have a look and see.
Yeah.
Look a little more at this because one thing's happened here in New Zealand is they've made lead
Mhm.
white illegal to
Yeah.
sell, and which is
Yeah.
really unfortunate. So I think you could still get it shipped into you, but in terms of
Yeah.
um being able to buy from a store, you're out of luck. And
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite whites is the lead whites. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, just use zinc. And I'm like, no, never.
No. Just,
That's not
just
going to
that.
happen.
No, it's not the same. It's not the same.
It is really not the
Then you
same.
might as well switch to acrylics as well after that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's just not going to happen. No offense to
Yeah.
acrylic painters out there, but no, it's not going to
Absolutely.
happen.
Absolutely. No.
All
No,
right.
it's something different. Yeah. It is.
Is there anything else that we can we could throw into the mix here, Joachim? Well, I'd love to know like what's next for you. I mean, you're painting in one of the most spectacular places on the planet. You continued, you know, to work for nature, inspired by your surrounds. Are there any big projects that you have coming up? Is there anything that's that you're excited about that's on the horizon for you? And you're now a new dad as well, so that's a huge part of your life.
Yeah, for sure it is. No one ever told me you would have the zero time to do anything after becoming a parent, but now I've learned the hard way. No, become quite efficient,
Hmm.
I have to say. But what's next? I mean, there's not a particular big project. I'm looking for scholarships in terms of doing bigger projects and more long-term projects, like sort of full-time.
Hmm.
Um, Trying to apply for competitions and stuff like that. Joining exhibitions, and I have an exhibition next summer here in the area where I live. But otherwise, it's well, we just started a 4-year part-time program here in Oslo for just landscape painting,
Hmm.
both indoors and outdoors. So starting in January, so that's like next for me for sure. Trying to really like make that environment here in Norway, create some landscape painters,
Hmm.
and spread the love for nature in that way. I think that's my main goal now, really, to
Amazing,
teach it, yeah,
amazing.
and then just continue to do some maybe do some bigger trips. Maybe not this winter, but when fall spring comes, do some longer trips, just plein air trips. I'd love to go to New Zealand at some point to paint there. It's been a dream for many years, but
Oh, come
about
on,
that.
let me know. We'll go painting together.
Yeah,
I'd love that.
yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I'd love that. That'd be awesome. Yeah, because I mean, just remember, you took a freaking helicopter up to a mountain at some point to paint,
Oh
didn't
yeah,
you?
yeah. We're gonna do it again here in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, yeah,
Amazing. Oh
yeah,
my God. That's
yeah.
so cool. Oh my
Well,
God.
I mean,
That's really,
I mean, I would do it the hard way and climb up the mountain. Some of them are just a little bit too big, and I don't got that kind of time. But
and
yeah,
steep, no, yeah,
and
I
steep.
feel you. I feel you.
Some of them are unclimbable. Yeah, that's right, and a little bit
Yeah,
dangerous.
yeah,
So now that I'm a father as well, I don't like
yeah.
yeah, taking too many unnecessary risks.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's so cool. I'd love to do that in Norway or something. Just go with the chopper because it's, yeah, trekking for like a day up a mountain to paint for 2 hours and then heading back home is like,
That's hard.
it's not the, yeah, it is hard. Yeah, it is.
Mm.
There's a reason why I'm not doing it as much of late.
Well, we will continue to watch your journey unfold with great interest, and you know,
Thank you.
following along on your Instagram of all the things you've got going on. It's inspiring stuff. You know, you
Thank you very much.
inspire me to get out there and get a little more adventurous with my approach, and to get a little bit more outside of my comfort zone and tackle some subjects that I otherwise might not have considered. But
Yeah.
this has been inspiring. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for being on the Creative Endeavor.
Thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure. I love it. Very nice to meet you as well. And yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Creative Endeavor podcast, and a huge shout out and thank you to Joakim Wanrup for joining me. You can find him right now on his Instagram. He goes under the title Jogs Flash, JOGSFLASH. Check out his beautiful work and follow along with his adventure, that is his artistic journey over there on Instagram. He's producing some beautiful stuff. I certainly have been inspired to be a little bit more adventurous with my choice of subjects and just how far I'm willing to go to capture that subject. Maybe hike a little higher, walk a little further, and stay out a little bit longer, even when it's particularly cold. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, then please do me a huge favor and leave me a rating or a review on whatever audio platform you're listening on. It makes a huge difference to the show. And share this on your social media as well. I really appreciate it. All right, I'm going to get out of here, get back to painting. But it's been so much fun hanging out with you here in the studio. And I'll see you again in another episode of The Creative Endeavor.